Hello kindred longevity lifestyle designers, this is Gavin here with secretsoflongevity.com. This is a general video response. It's in reaction to a commenter, but it's also a theme or a topic that's just currently going on from my perception of some things online. It's related to a recent video actually our good old friend Matt Monarch put out. So you've probably seen in this video series, if you're watching this in the video response playlist on my channel, that I've made, I believe it's 2 video responses to Matt Monarch in the past. I've never responded to them, don't know if he even listened to them in any way, but essentially I was calling him out on his idea, or his ideology, that health comes down to one thing, and it's detoxification. And any kind of sickness that comes up is due to your body detoxing in some way. So, and just as an aside here, I'm just getting over being sick, or sort of in the midst of it. It's gone through a few different stages. I actually got sick at the beginning of the weekend, I guess Friday night. I started to get a really bad sore throat, but it was done by the end of the weekend, but now it's turned into sort of a head cold. I'm more productive than I was on the weekends, so I feel like I'm not sick, but of course I'm sneezing and stuffy. And it's actually been over a year since I was sick, so it's quite an interesting experience. It's not a pleasant one, but stuff happens, and I'll get back to my experiences with how I got sick in a moment. But this idea that we can so easily explain things when it comes to health in these rigid ideas that don't have room for other possibilities is very limiting, and in my view often demonstrates someone's complete ineptitude on the topic of health. So a recent commenter on a video, in the comment section, it started off, they sounded very knowledgeable, but often there's sometimes a type of person that kind of gets off on sounding knowledgeable because they get some sort of narcissistic need from it, or fulfillment. It's like what in psychology is narcissistic supply. So it's very common in sort of, different regimented or rigid type ideologies, whether it's raw food community or raw veganism, or even low-fat raw veganism, or in this case extreme skepticism, where there's these certain ideas that are just commonly known to be false. And I don't have to give proof for anything, but this is the way it is, because this is the opinion of the mainstream medical community. And even if it's not the mainstream medical community's idea, it's an idea that might have come from that and is a simplified, completely delusional misrepresentation of the idea. And just because it has that association with having some sort of scientific word in it, it somehow holds more weight than any other idea that isn't as commonly known, or is just not known by that person. So essentially this person was arguing, after I brought up something about having caught pneumonia as a kid because I was a young teenager, because I was out in the cold. And he was saying, oh, you don't get it from cold, you get it from bacteria or virus, depending on what type of sickness it is. And I'm like, yes, there's an involvement of bacteria in that issue, but I wouldn't have gotten the pneumonia if I hadn't walked 5 kilometers home in the snow in a t-shirt and literally gotten my core temperature dropped to the point where my immune system was so low that those elements could then invade whatever tissue in the body and make me sick. And that's been my lifelong sort of hang-up when it comes to health. When I get sick, it's almost always because of some sort of mistake on my part when it comes to misjudging the weather. It seems like a silly cause, but I generally am very healthy. I don't get sick from just contact with people who are sick. Usually, there's obviously been probably some cases of that. But this weekend, for example, coming home on the Thursday night, I'd been out in the bar scene with a friend and had 1 or 2 drinks and was less aware of how cold it was outside, and I was walking home from downtown. It's a 15-minute walk. It was a very cold night, and I had my jacket undone, not all the way, but I didn't have any sort of head or neck protection. I'm just walking around completely exposed to the cold in that way. I'm usually a little more bundled up, especially around the neck. That's a very important area to keep warm, because a lot of heat comes out of the head, and it's known in Chinese medicine, and these are more poetic type understandings, and that was a point this person was trying to bring up, because I mentioned something about Ayurveda and Chinese medicine. Oh, immediate dismissal, that's bullshit, you can't talk about that stuff. Okay, 5,000 years of really rigid empirical wisdom that was distilled over many, many generations of highly proficient doctors that lived a long time and cured a lot of people. Yep, all that's gone out the window. But essentially, in Chinese medicine, they say that the back of the neck is the most vulnerable area in terms of catching what they call wind. So you get a lot of wind or a lot of cold exposed to your neck and back, upper back. That allows they talk in terms of energy, that allows that energy to get into the body and cause issues. If you wanted to get extremely specific when it comes down to science, there's an explanation for what's going on physiologically with that. But essentially it comes down to it's a completely valid idea. It's just the wording around it that some people who are locked into that extreme skeptical, rigid, dogmatic way of thinking are going to dismiss it just on the basis that they don't understand it. And that's totally legitimate. I wasn't asking them to accept Chinese medicine or anything like that, but just the notion of thinking that the cold doesn't make you sick if your body temperature drops was complete ridiculousness. I sent the guy some links, studies on a large group of people where a certain number put limbs in cold water for 20 minutes at certain intervals, and then there was a control group and the group that was having the cold water exposure for too long. I'm not talking about cold showers, this can be beneficial, but 20 minutes plus in ice water, they'd have 29% increased risk of getting sick. And it's a very basic physiological explanation that your white blood cells get pulled away from the area that's getting exposed to the cold, and that allows for any kind of virus or bacteria that is in your body, which we are exposed to all the time, whether or not it's from a specific person, which is the medical idea that all sicknesses comes from bacteria and viruses, which they can play a role for sure in a lot of sicknesses, but that's not the cause in many cases. So the initial thing that launches us into getting sick. So what I'm highlighting in this is just, you have these two ideas that, medical paradigm, you only get sick from, and it's not even the medical paradigm, it's the ignorant person trying to portray their knowledge as medical by using this one idea for medicine, which is a very valid fact that bacteria and viruses exist, and fungus, and these things invade the body, and when they get out of hand, they cause illness. Then there's the raw food extreme idea that, we have toxins that can build up, whether the toxins created by our own metabolic processes that can build up in various ways, or if it's toxins from our environment, food, etc. Yes, those can exist. People have that. A lot of people have a lot of that, and they need to go through certain types of detoxification if they want more optimal health. Yes, if you're extremely toxic in any number of ways, if you suddenly do a big cleanse, you can have symptoms of getting sick as a reaction because your body's overwhelmed with what's coming out of you, and it will reabsorb some of that and symptoms can flare up. My point with this video is that we cannot get into any one rigid idea that these are the cause of all illness. It's extremely delusional to think that way. So in classical Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic terms, they actually have ways of understanding these different things. So diseases of exposure, which would be like exposing yourself to bacteria, fungus, etc., or having negative elements in your surroundings that are going to make you sick, is what that idea is. It's totally valid, but it's not the only one. Then there's the other side of it, which is exposure to the elements, meaning outside of the home. So wind, dryness, excess dampness, excess heat, excess cold. So it's the extremes of what the weather can throw at us can make us sick in various ways. Then you have that idea of detoxification from diseases of excess. So if you eat too much of certain types of things, that can overburden the body, from also things that contain pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, whatever. You take those in, your body's going to hold on to them, and you need to detoxify them. Then there's the idea of diseases of lack. So take the most commonly known nutrient around immune health. You have a deficiency of vitamin C for a certain number of days, and your immune system starts to plummet. That makes you more susceptible to those viruses and bacteria that you either already have in your body or are going to be exposed to at some point, taking over and running rampant and making you sick. So the solution to addressing an issue of deficiency when we're talking about a nutrient isn't to lather up with some antibacterial soap. It's to take more vitamin C from a food or into a whole food supplement form. of course, there can be a range of various nutrients that can cause various problems in our body if it's been deficient for a certain period of time. So there's even some causes for illnesses beyond that. Just like any other type of issue when it comes to health, the more people get boxed in and closed-minded around these things, the more we can pretty much surmise that they're going to be incorrect when you take the time to research something more in depth. So watch out for those people who arrogantly proclaim certain things online just for the ego gratification that they get from trying to be right. And let me know what you think in the comments below this video. If you feel so inclined, check out also the links below in the drop-down menu for various companies that when you purchase through those links, any other products, it helps me out to continue putting out such great content. So I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.